Queer temporalities and lesbian ontologies. Let's go. When people ask, who's the man? Do one, but say there's no man, that's the whole point. I am about to do a research paper in queer temporality for my fine art, and I thought I'd actually explain what queer temporality is. So let me start this slideshow. So what is queer temporality, or queer temporalities? Let me explain what queer is first, and then I'll explain what temporalities are. What is queer? Queer often means different. I'm going to say that often it is in reference to sexuality and gender expression, but queer in a sort of whole just means different, a bit quirky. Temporalities is regarding the experience of time and how an individual or group maybe experience time. So combine that, queer temporalities is how queer people experience time, which often differs to sort of heterochronology. I think it's chronology or hetero time, heteronormative time, heteronormative structures. So here I explain what's the difference between cis time and queer time. So let me go through that. Cis people tend to have their firsts earlier or on a particular time, whereas queer people maybe have their firsts a lot later than average, or they have their first but cannot be that open about their first because there is shame and societal repercussions around it. Or even if they are able to tell people, there's still an element that you have to kind of hold back. You don't bond over the girl crushes that they have over the boys in the year. You can't bond over like that the way they do, because you're meant to you withhold information. So a lot of firsts are delayed. A lot of people don't have their first experiences as the lesbian until their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they may have married men even, and it took marrying men to even realise, like, oh, actually, I like women, you know. So it's a whole complex thing, and because obviously we don't have a lot of media representing us, it kind of does do a disservice to us. Whereas straight people and cis people have representation all the time, romance stories, where they're presented, very like gender binaries as well, but they seem to be seen all the time, sort of prince charming scenarios. We have none of that as gay people. Straight people do though. To the binary part, cis and heteronormative people tend to have more strict roles around gender norms. This is what a woman does, this is what a man does. If a woman does this in a relationship, she's a bad woman. Or if a man does this in a relationship, he's a bad man. Whereas in sort of queer sort of dynamics is that, I don't know, at least in a lesbian relationship, there's no man there. I hate it when people ask, who's the man? Do one, but there's no man, that's the whole point. It's just like, we don't have any gender norms, but there is butch and femme. That's not a weird thing going on between the straights. Like, that is different. Butch and femme is an identity, and butch and femme is about, these people care about each other. Oh my god, it sounds bad. I'm sure some straight couples do care about each other, but there's just often a more balancing of roles, or like, example, having a kid. I feel like, I'm not saying it all the time, it might end up on one person, but it looks like lesbian parenting seems a lot better than maybe straight parenting sometimes, because often the woman is left by herself in straight parenting to look after kids, and she is like actually chained to the area. The kid, they can't put a kid down, like that's their life now, whereas a man can kind of move freely. I also said earlier, there's representation, they see themselves in movies and media, whereas with queer people, we tend to not see ourselves. We see this representation, and we often think we are broken because we cannot see ourselves in that representation. And obviously this kind of messes with people who are also neurodivergent. I mean, it messes with everyone, but people who are neurodivergent who are like, I need to follow a social script in order to survive. And that's not part of the social script. And you're not part of the social script, how does this compute? It makes everything extra hard. Had straight people and cis het people had the rights to marry. They had the rights to fall in love, to adopt, have kids. So very recently that gay people have had the right to marry, trans people have had the right to transition. And I think it's kind of going backwards actually, which is kind of worrying. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like lifespans are changed and altered, because often like maybe cis het people are treated more correctly and more respected more. I do put the caveat of women though. Women are often treated badly by the medical system, and in particular black women whose pain aren't taken seriously and are expected to take a lot more pain, which is awful. But on a sort of similar note, and this would be similar for people of colour who are also queer, but in relation to that, like the AIDS epidemic, and how often the sort of medical neglect around that has caused a generation of gay men to not be here, and trans people and people who attained HIV, which is awful. Also, I want to relate to maybe mental health and like both gay and trans. When I say gay, I mean like all aspects of the LGBTQ plus and trans people, and how often they have foreshortened futures and don't always see a future, which often leads to sort of ending life situations, which is awful and is still an issue to this day.
Ended so bleakly, but I wanted to explain how queer people do experience time differently, so don't feel bad. We literally have a different timeline and we have so much history and trauma to get through, so bless yourself.